Now. All right, so this is over your poetry explication. So your very first page of your poetry explication, APA style, so we have a cover sheet. I'm not going to show you their cover sheet because then that tells you their name, and I don't want to do that. I want to keep their information private, even though they did a great job on this paper. APA formatting. So we're doing the title page, and then we're doing page numbers after that. Remember, we have headings, and then we have subheadings. So this is a little bit confusing with APA because you have levels of headings, okay? So level 1 headings are always centered, bold. So their main heading, so where this would be beneficial is if you write a 20-page paper. It almost like separates it into chapters. So their main heading of their paper is a level 1. It's bold and in the center. And then they go level 2. If you do all of these main headings as level 1s, and then your subheadings as level 2s, that's correct also. But if you want to mimic what they do, what they're doing is correct. They have level 1 as their main heading. Level 2 is their 4 sections, which we'll go over. The other 4 sections are right here. So I kind of have this page right here set up to show you. So their title is level 1, so you might write next to it, bold, centered. And then they will have introduction, speaker setting title, language analysis, and conclusion. Those are all level 2s, and they're left bold. So do y'all see these right here? You go left bold on those. Okay? And then under language analysis, they analyze 3 different things. So then on those, they left bold italics, which I'll show you in a minute. So in their introduction right here, they talk about, they identify the title, the author, and then they do a short summary of it. So you are picking a poem that is on our syllabus. So it's over the last couple of weeks, one of the poems that we have read. So if you pick White Lies by Natasha Trethewey, in this introduction, you're identifying the title of the poem, the author of the poem, and writing a short summary of that poem based on your reading of it. Okay? Everybody understand that? So then you are moving to the speaker setting title section. So in this section, you're going to identify speaker. Your speaker is not necessarily the author. Okay, your author and speaker are usually different. So the speaker in White Lies is a school-age girl that is of mixed race, female. Okay, so those are 3 things we know about her. The speaker. Now that author, she's an adult. So the author may have similar characteristics of the speaker, but it may not be the same. I could write a poem and the speaker of the poem be an elementary boy telling the story. So that's speaker versus author. Okay, so in this one, you're going to identify anything you can figure out about the speaker. And we'll go over some things that you look for here in a minute that you could identify about the speaker. So in this one, it says it's in a classroom. The speaker's in a classroom. You are talking about the setting. So that is where the setting comes in. And then you are analyzing the title. What is the meaning of that title? Why was it picked? Like for White Lies, it's a double meaning title. White Lies because she was lying about being white, but also White Lies means that it's a minor lie. It's a little lie. It's not a big lie, it's a minor lie. So that title has a double meaning. So right here, I'm going to discuss the double meaning of that title based on what I know about what White Lies means. Okay, why do I think the author chose that title? So then we're going to go to our literary analysis section. So right here, she is going to analyze 3 things in literary analysis. So right here it says 3 paragraphs. Analyze 3 different elements that are present in the poem. Diction, figures of speech, irony, tone. There's other things, and we're going to get into some other things you could look at. So she looks at imagery. Okay, so here it's a level 3 APA title. So level 2 was left side bold. Level 3 is left side bold italics. So these 3 sections let me know that all 3 of these go underneath language analysis because they're a level 3. So all level 3s go underneath that level 2. They're all part of that level 2. Okay, so under here, under language analysis, I would write the 3 sections of language analysis should be the title of it, the heading of it is left align, bold, italics. And if you need some help with some of that stuff, that's what you would bring your paper in complete and let me look at before the class period it's due. Okay, and I can help you fix those little minor things. That's easy to fix. Okay, that's not content. Okay, your content I can help you with, but that's going to take more than a 5-minute conversation content. Okay, so here we go. So what she does is she explains imagery. Then right here she gives one example from the text. She writes that whole line of poetry from the text, gives credit to the author, has that APA in-text citation, author's last name, year published, page number, and then she explains it. So after every quote of text, you need to offer explanation. Okay, so these sections should be imagery. What is imagery? Why does the author use imagery? Quote of the text, an explanation of that text. And then she goes into another quote of the text, an explanation of that text. Okay, then we move on. She looks at alliteration. Alliteration, what is alliteration? She identifies what alliteration is. Then she gives a piece of it, and look how she does this. She embeds her quote in a sentence. She doesn't just quote it. She says, Hughes uses alliteration multiple times in Theme for English Speak, such as in line 13 when he states, so do you see how she embeds that quote in that sentence? That's really cool. Whenever you get to that point, you can do that. That's really advanced writing. That shows me that you're not just putting in a quote, you're embedding it in a sentence. Like saying, Hughes explains. Hugh describes in line 13. Trethaway writes in line 12. Da, 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 da. Okay? And then she explains that quote. Then she gives another quote. Then she explains that quote of alliteration. So why did that author use the alliteration? Because it adds emphasis, it evokes reader emotion. And then her last section, she did rhetorical questions, because in that poem, he asked multiple rhetorical questions. He's not really looking for an answer, but she's like, why did the author do that? So this is her answer. Why does the author use rhetorical questions? She says what a rhetorical question is. She gives the example of rhetorical question. She offers analysis of it. She explains it. She gives another rhetorical question, offers why he would ask that. Gives another rhetorical question, explains why he would do that. And then, here we go, a level 2, heading again, conclusion. And she writes her conclusion, just kind of summarizing what she wrote about in the paper. This paper will be 1-page title, 4 pages content, 1 page your reference sheet. Remember, references are what we call our works cited page in APA. Okay? So here's some other things. Paper format, double space, 1-inch margin, 12 point. Remember, your page numbers go up here at the upper right left. It doesn't have last name. APA, that's MLA. APA, we just have page number. Then I have, again, what you need on your title page in case you forgot. I have some notes on in-text citations. So if you forget how that works in APA, you can look at that. Long quotes, block quotes, what equals a long quote? Usually for poetry, you're not going to have one that's over 40 words. You shouldn't have 40 words. Some of y'all kind of took advantage of that a little bit on your last paper where you had 40 word, 40 word, 40 word. Lots of block quotes. Block quotes should not be your go-to. That should not be your frequent in your paper. For this, you should not have block quotes. Okay? You do have to have one outside source. So you'll have your book source and one outside source. Now here's something cool you can do. So you could find a source that talks directly about that poem. That's fine. You can. So I could find a source that talks about Natasha Trethaway's White Lies, and I could incorporate that where they talk about that play on words with the title. And then I could use pieces of what they say in my paper as proof to further explain what I'm saying. But another cool thing you can do with this is White Lies is about somebody who is having this internal conflict about which race they identify as. Because she is mixed race, and so she doesn't know where she fits in. She's having an internal struggle. So what if I find another piece that talks about the psychology behind that, about people that have mixed race and the internal struggle that they have with that, and I apply that to her poem. That is advanced research. So like another example, which I don't think this would apply necessarily to the poem, but so one of the authors we read about, Longfellow, whose wife passed away. Is that right? Longfellow was the one whose wife passed away. And then he writes this poetry right after his wife passes away. And that poetry is pretty dark. What if I take that poem where he's writing about that's super dark, and I take the psychology stages of grief, and I apply those stages of grief to that poem? And I look like, oh, he's in the anger stage in this section. And I apply that psychology thought to that poem. That's really advanced. So you can do your outside source two ways. You can find an outside source that directly relates to that poem, or you could do an outside source that is about that theme and apply it to it. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well? You kind of have your choice.
Yeah.
So you have your choice where you want to go with that. All right, so on your reference sheet, you'll have at least two things. The poem and one other source, okay? Next, this page, Poetry Explication. This right here is just a guide. If you don't know where to begin on this, if you start answering these questions, you have the content for your paper. Then you just have to put it in paper form. So read the poem silently, then out loud again. Paraphrase the poem. Identify the speaker and the intended audience. Identify the specific setting. So if you go through and you do these things on the paper, when you go to write your paper, you already have those pieces done. You just have to write it in complete sentence form, okay? And make it a nice little paragraph, okay? And then consider the poem's title. So those are all the things I'm asking you to do in this paper, but if you'll do it on paper first, then you develop that into paragraphs. Language analysis. Y'all stick with me. This is important. Language analysis. So here's some things you can analyze. Now you can reach beyond these things listed here, depending on what the content of that poem is. But here's some things, if you have no clue what to do, these are present in almost all of the poems. Diction, so that's word choice. Poems have very few words, most of them. So that word choice is important in poetry. Why did the author choose that word? What was symbolic of that? What was the meaning of that? Why would that diction be used? Identify any figures of speech. So we're looking for metaphors, similes, that's used over and over. Irony. If there's irony in the poem where what you expect to happen is not what happens. The tone of the poem. And then here's some poetry questions. Y'all stay with me, okay? Here's some questions you can ask. And you don't have to go through and answer all of these, but I'm telling you, if you go through and answer a chunk of these, you have the content for your paper. Who is the speaker? Look at the speaker's age, sex, sensibilities, level of awareness, and values. If you answer that, you know what to write about in the speaker section. Are they addressing someone in particular? How does the reader respond to that speaker? What is the specific time and place of the poem? Does reading the poem aloud help the reader understand it? That right there, if reading it out loud helps the reader understand it, reading it out loud will also tell you if there's a rhythm to that poem. So that's another thing you could look at, okay? What does the title emphasize? There's multiple things here. I mean, you can go through. How does the diction reveal meaning? What allusions are present? What is the tone of the poem? What irony is present? What sounds are repeated? Do we have alliteration where that beginning sound, where we have like ba, 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 repeated in a line at the beginning of words? What does that do when there's a sound device used? Does it have a rhyme scheme at the end? Why would the author do that? What's the purpose of that? So those are all areas you could analyze. Okay, one other thing I need you to be aware of. I want you to do the work. Listen to me. Do the work on this. Put in the time, put in the effort. Some of you have waited till the last minute, then you get in a bind, then you go online, then you find whole sources and you just copy and paste from multiple sources. you put those sources in paraphrasing tools, and then you just piece it all together. Or some of you have even started reaching out to AI tools, where those AIs will write chunks for you. Do the work. There are some things AI could be beneficial for. This is not it. Do the work. I have given you the information that 4 pages will not be difficult if you will go through these steps. I can tell most of the time if what I'm reading you wrote or not because of the vocabulary. Whenever first semester, the vocabulary was just normal junior level vocabulary, and then all of a sudden you jump to upper college vocabulary in your last paper, I question if you even know the meaning of some of the words you're using. Because some of you are not putting in the work. If you are struggling with how to put in that work, come, let me work with you. I would love to help you and show you how you go through these steps and how you form those paragraphs and how you can write it. But I want you to do the work. And if your work is very basic English and doesn't have all these fluff words, that's okay. I want your work. I want to see what you're capable of. You putting in the work will benefit you in the long run and the short term too. But it's going to have to take some dedication, and you cannot wait till March 29th to decide you want to write this paper that's due March 30th. You need to start now. Pick your poem now. Go ahead, identify author now. Identify speaker now. Identify those things now, and your paper will build itself. Then you just have to put it in complete sentences and make paragraphs and help the flow of it. Okay? Do y'all have any questions about this paper? If you need me to stay after school one day, come, let me know ahead of time, and I will arrange to stay after with you. You can always come in the morning, 7:40, and I will be in here to work with you on it. Okay? We'll have some days built in next week that we can work on this, but don't rely on just class time. This is going to take some outside time, especially since we missed several days of class this week because of SAT, Rachel's Challenge, all the business that happened this week. UIL, it's been a crazy week. Yeah. So you need to stay on top of it. Those 5 poems you need to read. Okay? You need to go into your discussion. Be ready for quiz tomorrow. But after you take your quiz tomorrow, work on this paper. Okay? Work on the paper. Use the time you're given wisely. Okay? This is not a difficult paper, but it will take you some time to dive into a poem. Pick a poem that you understand. Pick one that makes sense to you. If you read all of these and you say, well, none of them make sense, Ms. Cornett, let me walk you through one of them that you feel like you can grasp a little bit. And I'll walk you through some of the meaning on it. Okay? So you need to go through and do your 5 poem readings.